Welcome to the Divergent AF podcast. I'm your host, Selena Thompson, a late diagnosed ADHD mother on a hashtag journey to unapologetic authenticity. Dive into the rabbit hole realness with me as we overshare unfiltered and relatable stories of what neurodivergent life is really like. Lifting the lid on the honest, hilarious, and heartbreaking topics typically confined to our inner monologue. Get ready to feel seen and heard as we ditch the to-do list, the daily planners, but most importantly, the shame. Welcome back to the Divergent AF podcast. This is episode 6. I'm your host, Selena Thompson, and I am currently re-recording this episode the day before it's due to be released. Why is that? Because the episode that I was originally going to do, which I'd recorded half a segment for, was all about being, too much, being that girl, feeling like you're just a lot. And over the space of 24 hours, I'm feeling a little bit fragile about who I am. And if there's anything that you know about us is that we just don't fake feelings. And so I'm not going to sit here and bullshit the rest of an episode about how I'm so fine with being too much and that girl. So ergo, I am going to re-record a whole episode the day before it's due. Like it's hard. So anyway, I had to think, okay, I'm a little bit fragile. What is something that you can never take away from me that's all part of my ADHD? And it dawned on me. And it is a really crazy story that I have always wanted to share, that I've been told I must share. And actually, it was what prompted my therapist to say that I should write a book on my life because it is like Alice in Wonderland. To which I replied, wasn't the author on LSD when they wrote that? And he laughed. I laughed. We both laughed. So the topic of this story is really about ADHD strengths, which is hyperfocus. And I feel like it's actually not spoken enough about. I feel like the best quality that we have that no one could ever outdo us on is our complete ability to hyperfocus. And I'm not talking focus, it's hyperfocus for a reason. There's no bathroom breaks, there's no eating, there's no drinking. I always think I would love to be hooked up to an IV and I could just go until I'm at the end of the rabbit hole, because that is how it feels. You can't talk, you can't task switch, you can't move. You're on and you will get the answer and you will outdo anyone on whatever little niche topic this happens to be on. And it's usually when it's a crunch time, it's usually under a time pressure too. And I really think that this aspect of ADHD needs to be more celebrated. So this personal experience of mine, this would be my biggest ADHD hyperfocus triumph to date. And I don't think I would ever want to outdo it because there was so much at stake and it was so emotional. I look back and think, wow, I was so manic. When you got to do what you got to do, really. Not everyone can handle the jandle, can't handle the heat out the kitchen type vibe. But I thought I would share this with you, not only because I think it's a really good topic to get more awareness on, because I love hearing stories of ADHD hyperfocus wins because we are the top of our game when we want to be. And secondly, the information that I've gathered along the way on this little hyperfocus journey, I think has been so important and so beneficial. And if it can help any other person or family stuck in this position, then hell yes, listen to this. So I'm saying that this is a story about having a mystery, undiagnosable illness in a child for nearly a year. It's also connected to travel overseas. So if this isn't your thing, then don't listen, you filthy animal. So I'm going to endeavour to miss out a lot of the really super fine details and the high level advanced medical terms and procedures and things associated with that, because this is not a medical podcast where I'm teaching you about these disorders and these conditions, because I'm not a doctor officially. And two, it's not really the point of the story. The whole purpose of sharing this is to really look at collectively how amazing our brains can be in the right circumstances, and how I look back and I can honestly say I don't think there would be many people that could have pulled this mofo off. I barely didn't, but I did. Okay, so getting into it, I have just pulled out my case file, I used to call it, and I'm telling you, if there was ever a case file, it would be this. And I've actually just been perusing over my spreadsheets and my 20-page Word document detailing the symptoms every day, and I'm actually damn impressed at myself. Good work. Okay, so we had just returned from a week in Fiji. It was last year, and the 1st of July, my daughter, who was 5 at the time, was really not feeling well. And she'd been complaining of a really ouchy stomach. And my usual fear would be like, oh gosh, it's a gastro, it's coming for us, hide. But this was more ouchy. She had actually been complaining about an ouchy stomach intermittently throughout Fiji. And she was off her food, she was lethargic, she was really upset. And then this led to her screaming in pain in a ball, unable to walk that night. And the only reason I thought, okay, this is something serious, we have to get it looked at now, is because my appendix had actually burst at her age and it was missed. I almost died. They called me the miracle child. It had formed a cyst. If it hadn't formed a cyst, it would have just spread throughout my body, I would have had gangrene and died. And my mum had to go through fighting doctor after doctor, being sent away, not believed that this was something really wrong. But I think because of what my mum went through, it was just a story that was always on my radar, and that was always back yourself with the medical system and don't give up and don't take no, even if you have to fight through so many doctors and hospitals. Don't give up, because they get it wrong, because they're humans too. And I feel like parents really should be given more credit for knowing their kids' bodies better than a stranger. I mean, I can't think of anyone, unless you have Munchausen by proxy, that really wants to be at the doctor or the hospital. I mean, when I do take my kids there, or even myself, it's because it's like, we have to be here. We actually have to be here. I think that we've all had so many experiences where we're sent away and told viral and given Pamol, and it's actually a bloody waste of time. So anyway, I took her into hospital, and something inside of me always just knew this is going to be something. But the vibe was that this was not to be taken seriously. And it was immediately put down as, this is viral and you can go home. And I really had to push back to get some more testing done. And at that point, I then got shunted to another professional, because I had already gotten into a disagreement with the first one. So now I've been shunted down the line to the second one, a more senior one. And I just remember, in the space of waiting for the more senior one to come in, I just was on my phone. I was pouring through all the peer-reviewed literature, all the news articles, everything about kids that had been sent home with the same symptoms, saying it was viral, and it was something like their appendix or meningitis, and they died. And I was on fire, because hell no, this was not going to happen to my little girl. And so by the time the second one rolled up, I was like Wikipedia, but better, with all my resources sorted. And he actually could not argue with me. And I feel like I did it quite respectfully. And I do want to say, not once throughout these battles that I had with professionals did I cry, did I scream, did I yell, did I name call. I was a sniper. I was on a mission, okay? The emotions are out. I don't have time for emotions. They're not serving me right now. I wish I could do that in everyday life. But I've never felt so clear-headed and on my game, because I think the stakes were so high. Our brain is the way it is. if there's chaos, if there's danger, if there's emergency, if there's high stakes, we are on like no one else. And the second specialist that I got into a healthy debate with realized that everything I was putting down could actually not be argued away. And I think he also realized if I drop the ball on this one, that woman will actually hunt me down and ruin my life, and he's not wrong. So after some further testing and getting the results back, it was determined that yes, she should stay overnight because the results were abnormal. And just in a nutshell, the symptoms were painful stomach, temperatures, vomiting, fatigue, washed out, not able to eat, and enlarged lymph nodes on her abdominal scan. And actually, it turned out later that she had had an episode of intussusception. So intussusception, just really briefly, is where part of your bowel telescopes into the other part, and it can be very, very painful. And a lot of the time it does resolve itself quite instantly, which it did, thank God. But there was something going on in there, put it that way. So fast forward, we spent 3 nights in hospital and were told that it was mesenteric adenitis. I hope I've said that right. It's quite hard. So basically what I've learned is it's an exclusionary diagnosis. It's we don't know what the fuck is going on, so we're just going to call it this really hard to pronounce label so you can feel better about what is going on, that we don't know what is going on. And I remember the last night that we were in there, we'd actually been discharged on day 2 and subsequently rushed her back in, as we were told to do if there were symptoms that were happening. And we were told, hey, the bed's going to be left open for you. You don't have to go through ED. Well, no, we had to battle our way through security with threats of violence, which worked, but it was all lies, I tell you. They just wanted to get rid of us, but we were back. And I remember having one of my most heated arguments with another specialist because I kept getting shunted along them when they couldn't beat me. And this one just had absolutely no problem with being an arrogant dick to me, as well as slamming the door on me. And I was quite shaken up, but I wasn't going to give in. But I decided, hey, I'm going to watch Take Care of Maya. It's just came out. I don't know what this is about. And I don't know sometimes if things are divine timing, but I just remember watching this thinking, oh my gosh, that woman is so me. This woman is so me. So going to day 3, when we were getting discharged in the morning, I got confronted with the specialist I'd had the horrible run-in with the day before, plus his senior wagga wagga. I don't know who it was, but there was 2 of them. And up until this point, I had not had a 2-pronged attack before. I just had them one by one. So this one had got reinforcements, and it really wasn't him talking. He was standing kind of like he'd gotten his mum to come and tell me off and had nothing to say to me. That was just the vision I had of this guy. And it was at the end of this conversation that always stuck with me, and that was because I was offered to be referred to the consultant liaison, which was on the basis of me possibly needing psychological help because I was not dealing with the trauma of my burst appendix. And I don't know where they pulled that out of the air from, because I don't really remember much about that appendix incident with me. But I remember that just completely flooring me. And if you've ever had the feeling of being made to feel that you're crazy because you're speaking truth, or you might know some truth, that's really scary. And I remember my mind flashing back to watching Taking Care of Maya and thinking that this is a game and I've got to play this game with a straight back, because if I don't, and if I don't praise the gods that be and say my please and thank yous, I will be shipped off and muzzled. I would have to be muzzled. But it's a really horrible thing to do to a parent. And ever since then, I have viewed the medical system as a game. And you've got to play it right, because if you don't, you will not be believed. And if it's for your child, all you want to do is to be believed. And to have them looked at. So coming away from those 3 nights in hospital, I just remember having that niggling feeling that I think you get as a parent regardless, ADHD or not, was that something was not right and this wouldn't be over, and it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, she had a lot of time off school. There was always getting sick. There was falling asleep in class. There was being too tired to go to class. There was small kind of blood crusty noses. Like, all these things have never really happened to her before. So it was just kind of like every week there would be something new. Not able to regulate her temperature, being freezing cold, shivering, but covered it up in all the layers. And then also a few episodes of Melina, which is, if you've ever encountered Melina, you will know what it is. But basically it is black, tarry, stool, and that usually indicates bleeding from the upper GI tract. And I'm not here to educate on medical terms. You can totally Google this, but the reason why it's black and it has this godforsaken, you will never get the smell out of your nostril smell, is because it's old blood. And so again, this was just what the heck is going on? We've never seen this before. Super pale and washed out, loss of appetite, rashes on her waist and torso and chest, and also on her feet that would be so itchy and so uncomfortable that at nighttime she would have to have an ice pack to kind of burn that itchiness out, because that is how uncomfortable the itching was. So at the start of August, there was a day when all her rashes were really bad, really pronounced, really raised. There'd been an incident at school. She was really unraveling, and so took her straight to the GP under the guise of thinking, I just want a referral to a specialist and just to get her checked out. But the GP, to her credit, took one look at her and said, you need to go to the ED right now. So we did. We took her straight to the ED, and we were not admitted. We were basically asked, why have you brought her here? She doesn't have, critical vital signs, and we're just brushed off again, saying that this is all part of the viral illness. So anyway, while we were turned away, we did have some tests done, and they came back abnormal, blood and urine, and we were told viral illness and a UTI. And goodbye. So after that, that's probably when I started to get more serious into my investigation mode. I learned how to request the records with urgency from the hospital, from the GP, from all the testing facilities. And what I quickly, sadly, came to realize is that none of these places talk to each other. And there is not one great cloud system that holds every medical record from every hospital and every GP that someone can log into and have all the information in front of them. I was just in awe because I thought it was the most logical thing ever. Anyway, then I kind of switched up gears and I was collating all this information, and I have made some really impressive spreadsheets and line graphs and Word documents. There were a few visits to the GP. It was always something new. I often felt like I was the only one that was standing back looking at everything collectively and seeing that this may all be part of something bigger, not just playing whack-a-mole with every symptom and treating it separately. And I found that really frustrating and quite isolating, because I remember thinking, how does no one else's brain think like this? This is so logical to me. But I think that's kind of the beauty of having a differently wired brain, is that you do approach things differently and you can kind of see things that other people can't see. But it's really frustrating when you're told, like, no, actually your way of thinking is wrong and we're not going to go there. And then you turn out to be right. But anyway, I digress. So over the next 2 or 3 months from then, I was just always logging all the symptoms as they were coming up, because it just seemed like this beast was just evolving. When you have your child say to you that it feels like they're losing control of their body and what's wrong with me, you are going to stop at nothing to do what you need to do. And that is the mode that I went into, because the symptoms were massive change in appetite and energy, bloated, distended stomach, dry coughs, reflux, feeling like there was something stuck in her throat, That was when the fatigue was at its worst. She was so pale. She had rings around her eyes 24/7, these dark panda eyes. She was irritable. She just was not the same kid, and she knew that she was sick. And that balancing act of dealing with your emotions and her emotions and then trying to navigate your way through the system is incredibly tough, and it was so taxing on me mentally, but I had to keep going. There was just no option. 4 months into this, we were now seeing a pediatric gastroenterologist. I hope I said that right. And we had an endoscopy, a colonoscopy, and no definitive answers. But the symptoms were just worsening at this point. The scariest thing for me was the night sweats that she was getting, where to the point I had to change the sheets the next day. She was getting joint pain, complaining of having sore arms and sore legs. And this wasn't just growing pains. This was more regular. This was all the time. She was too sore and tired to go to a birthday party, to go to jump, to do all these things that she loved doing were suddenly too hard for her. And kids don't make that stuff up. They really don't. She was missing school. She was so lethargic. She would often want to be carried around. She just was not living life. And the circles around her eyes were just getting darker, and she was getting paler, and she just looked like a shell of this kid that she used to be. And we still had no definitive answer. And after being thoroughly investigated from a gastro point of view, we then moved into this horrible space of having a referral to see a general paediatrician on a public waiting list and a private waiting list. We were on months waiting list to see another specialist, and because she wasn't critical, the hospital wouldn't take her. The GP could just keep referring her, but we couldn't get in front of anyone. And in the meantime, you're watching your child basically disintegrate and vocalize that they know that they're not good. And you are so desperate as a parent. You know there is something going on, and it's like your hands are tied. So during the time of being on this waiting list, just hoping to be seen, I was just making sure that I was sending out emails when there'd been kind of serious developments or kind of a real drop in her health. And I made sure I just would CC everyone in. I was not going away. This wasn't going away, and I was going to try my damn hardest. And I didn't really care if I looked like a psychopath at this point, because at least I was a smart one. One email that I had sent at about midnight, I'd actually found a real struggle to pull it out, because I just was losing motivation and the will, because it's almost like I can understand what it must be like to be a door knocker, because it's actually quite demoralizing after a while. But incredibly, the next morning, I got an email and a phone call, bring her in straight away. And it was to see a private pediatrician that we'd been referred to. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I've done it, because I was attaching photos and she was getting enlarged lymph nodes kind of on her neck and behind her ears. And I think it was that got us over the line to get to the front of the line, if you know what I mean. So we went in there, and I was armed with my spreadsheets and my documents and my pleasant attitude. And we got the most incredible specialist that I am forever thankful for being referred to. And she actually was impressed. She wasn't offended. She realized that this is a parent that will just go to the ends of the earth, as any parent would, to get an answer when their child is unwell and we don't have an answer. So we sat down and hashed out the whole thing from the beginning, and there was not one hint of kind of superiority or who do you think you are. It actually felt really collaborative, and I just will always value and respect this woman, and I think she is just God's gift to earth. I really do. And at that point, with all the symptoms and everything else had been cleared, this was now going into looking for malignancy or cancers. Let's look at this, because this hasn't been done, and all these symptoms are pretty textbook. We need to check them out. So we did that, and so that was where it really was quite emotional. So that followed more testing and x-rays and ultrasounds and things like that, and they all came back not decisive and nothing that was really jumping out. And by this stage it was December, so there was a discussion at that point of, we have investigated as hard as we can at this point and we don't have the answer, but we're just going to have to wait because this is the best that we can do right now. And I accepted that, and I know exactly what she meant, because there's a fine line between exposing children to medical trauma and finding an answer. And at this point, I think when you're someone looking into all this and you're not living with that child every day and you're not seeing everything going on, looking in from the outside is very much, well, you've done everything you can do and it's nothing and leave it alone. And I remember being sat down and told, you need to stop this now. You need to stop. This has gone too far. You are traumatizing her and there's nothing wrong with her because look, all the stuff is coming back normal and there's nothing there. And I remember thinking, fuck you, try stop me. And that's exactly what happened. So after taking that advice with a grain of salt, as we do, one night, it was in December, my brain was ticking over and all I could think of was, all of this started the day after we got home from Fiji. This has to be connected to Fiji. I mean, really, why has this not really been kind of explored as much? And so I got on the computer and I didn't find much because I thought, okay, I'm going to go and look at the news and social media and just see, because obviously you think that if something's going down, there'll be articles about it and there'll be information about it. But I was drawing up empty. But I just had this inner knowing that this was all connected and tied to Fiji because we had just spent a week there. So anyway, I went and got on the CDC website and I was looking at what were outbreaks in Fiji at that time. And in June of last year, which is when we were there was a few illnesses that were put in the red category. So that is the highest. And I looked at them all and I went through kind of the symptoms. And it wasn't until I got into the last one, because nothing was really matching up, and I landed on typhoid. And I don't know about you, but I have had no bloody awareness of typhoid. I mean, I may have heard the word, but it was definitely not on the radar. It's not on the radar, is it? And once I got onto this, I realized that every symptom that she'd had, the whole timeline, the whole progression could be bloody typhoid. And I thought, okay, well, doesn't it just go away? No, it doesn't, unless you're treated with a specific course of antibiotics. Because it's a bacterial infection, it doesn't go away. And it starts to mimic, a lot of symptoms of cancer, the night sweats, the joint pain, everything. It was just this real holy crap moment. And so anyway, I then thought, but no, wait, we cannot be the only people. We're not that special. Why is this not known? Why am I not reading anything about this? The only thing that I found was these articles that came out last year around September, October, and it was about an isolated outbreak of typhoid in lab tests. There was a sample that had infected some of the workers with typhoid, but it was isolated to lab tests. And in my head, I think, oh, okay, so typhoid just got on a plane and it flew to lab tests, and that is why it is only in lab tests. It is not in the community. And again, I had a moment of, am I surrounded by fucking morons? Does everyone read this and not think this? So on the weeks leading up to seeing the specialist again, I had decided to make myself a self-taught typhoid specialist, not by choice. I had all the information and all the little dots to be connected, and showing up and bringing this to her was a validation of, wow, this actually could be it. You're bang on. Look at the progression, look at the timeline, look at the symptoms. I'm going to look into this and let's go from there. So unfortunately at this stage, testing for this type of bacterial illness and picking it up is a really low sensitivity. So we just couldn't catch the beast and we couldn't catch the flag. Although we couldn't get the clear diagnosis of what bacterial infection or illness this was. The symptoms were so bad they had turned into nerve issues, so trouble standing up, just falling to the ground, unable to hold a pen, getting an x-ray because she was insisting that her arm was broken and she couldn't move it. The decision was made that on the balance of basically all the evidence, on the balance of probabilities, we're going to treat it as such. And we were given a 3-week course of 2 different antibiotics, and that was it. So while we didn't have the clear flag, it was treated on the basis of the timeline and the symptoms, and also the fact that we were looking at a kid that was getting very low iron and had ongoing lethargy, and also facing the possibility of a diagnosis of central neural sensitization syndrome, which I was told not to Google. Basically, it's a little bit similar to what the girl had or has in Take Care of Maya. So it's kind of this open-ended nerve condition, and that's really terrifying. I'm really grateful that it didn't progress any further after we had this antibiotic treatment, and I just think that we're actually really lucky that I had gotten this across the line. And honestly, I don't really blow my horn too much, but I'm going to fucking blow my horn on this one, because if I wasn't as manic, as driven, as neurodivergent, I really believe we would not be at this point now. On a side note, it was quite interesting to see that in February this year, the Waikato District Health Board released a publication saying to be aware of returning travellers from Fiji, especially children, and to be on the lookout and to test for typhoid. So I felt that was quite interesting. But I haven't really seen anything else about it in the media or in the news. I do see a lot of Facebook posts come up, people saying, should we get vaccinated for typhoid? And I see so many people say, no, don't need it, it's not here. And I die a little inside, because I think that it is a possibility, because it did happen to us. And look, we don't have the on the record confirmation, but we have a cause and effect confirmation. And I know that it won't be us. I also found it super interesting that the Communicable Disease and Control Manual was updated in March 2024 of this year to expand on the case definition of salmonella, which is what salmonella causes typhoid. And I just found that super interesting. That's what I'm saying. So going through this whole insane journey has taught me that don't ever give up on yourself and what you believe and what you know to be right, because I think all parents have an intuition and know their children better than anyone. And then I think if you're neurodivergent and you notice everything, that is another layer. And I'm really proud of myself, and I don't ever say that because it's weird, but I'm really proud of myself that I somehow survived this crazy journey. And I feel so lucky that we had a good resolution, and it was a matter of taking the right antibiotics. There is so much stuff I could ramble on about typhoid, but again, the whole point of this is not to teach medical terms, and also I probably would get a word wrong. And yeah, if anyone after listening to all of this is going through something similar, honestly, please just message me, please DM me, because I am so open to helping anyone if I can, because it was hell. It was absolute hell. And I think the hardest thing was feeling that I was all alone in this, in my way of thinking, and feeling like, why is no one else putting these dots together like I am? And then turning out to be pretty much right. So wrapping this story up, I hope that you may have got something useful from this, whether it just be a confirmation that, yeah, we do think differently, but sometimes it is the right kind of different needed for a certain scenario. And also a celebration of your little wins of hyperfocus and manicness, because I can't even tell you how much sleep I've lost that I'll never recover, probably years off my life. I'm still standing barely, but it's a win and it's an achievement. And I think that a lot of us, we're like the detectives that solve the unsolvables. There always has to be a metaphor in these things. Thanks for tuning into episode 6. To be honest, I found this actually quite cathartic on a selfish level, because pulling out my case file of all my documents and my records of madness has now made me realize I can just let this go and put it in the past, because it was a really traumatic, life-changing catalyst in a lot of ways. But I'm still here. Okay, toodles.